Should you have your airplane in an LLC? Welcome to the channel. It's good to have you here. I think we have a topic today that's worth talking about, especially if you have aspirations to ever own an aircraft. I've been very lucky over the course of my career, and I have been able to own several aircraft, single and twins. I enjoyed the ability to just run down the airport, jump in and go whenever I want. I don't have to do any scheduling with anyone else. It was great. But there is a factor of ownership that many people skip over, especially when they find that perfect airplane that's in their price range, it's nearby, and they just go ahead and buy it. As we get into this very important topic, please do me the favor of clicking the like button, subscribe to the channel so the algorithm will love you and me, and of course, leave a comment down below. Have you ever bought an airplane? Have you ever sold an airplane? And did you have it in an LLC, or did you own it in a corporation of some other type, C or S Corp, or did you own it under your personal name? Let us know. First step, we should probably define what an LLC is. LLC stands for Limited Liability Corporation. It is the simplest and least burdensome of all the corporate models, but it does mean the entity, your aircraft, your boat, your RV, whatever it is owned by a corporation, not by you. Even if you're the only person in the LLC, you're the only member of the LLC, that still provides a wall of separation provided you form and manage the LLC properly. And that can be really advantageous because limiting liability means life is just a little bit better. Now, I'm not a lawyer, and I'm certainly not your lawyer, and I'm not a CPA, so I'm not going to do your taxes, and I'm not going to give you any specific advice on how you should structure your financial life. But even though all 50 states have their own rules and regulations and ordinances and laws, there are some basics that we at least should consider. So if we're going out to buy an airplane, or if we have an airplane and we want to sell it at some point, we may want to talk to somebody like a lawyer or a CPA and say, should I own this aircraft in an LLC? And what are the advantages of that? I'll give you a couple examples, but your lawyer or your CPA may know some options that are beneficial to you that I don't know because I don't live in your state. Now, you should know that setting up an LLC is relatively simple and relatively inexpensive, but it's not just file some paperwork, pay a fee, and you're free to go. It's still a corporation. You have to have an operating agreement that you actually stick to. That's how the business runs. And yes, it's a business, even if it's just you owning one aircraft or a motorcycle collection or a sailboat. It's still a business. You have to have that operating agreement and you have to follow it. You have to have an annual meeting, even if that's just you, or maybe you and your spouse are all the members of the LLC. You have to have an annual meeting and you have to have minutes for that annual meeting. I do it all the time. I own a few LLCs for various reasons, and I'll just sit down by myself and write out, how did things go last year? What are my goals for next year? What's the financial status? Am I happy? Am I unhappy? Where are we going with this? Just like a regular business meeting. It also helps because if I know why I have the LLC and what my goals are with it, the odds of me being happy with the outcome of all this go up dramatically. Now, let's say you want to buy an airplane, or you own an airplane and you're getting ready to sell it. In both cases, there are real advantages to owning that airplane in an LLC as opposed to personally. Now think about this. If you went out and you bought Harbor Freight, I don't mean a hammer or a saw at Harbor Freight. I mean, if you had $1 bazillion and went and bought Harbor Freight, you wouldn't have to pay tax on every item in inventory that they've got. Every hammer, every saw, every drill, every jack, every compressor. You wouldn't be paying sales tax on all those things. The same thing when you sell an airplane or buy an airplane that's held in an LLC, there's no sales tax. You bought the business. Everything the business owns comes with it. The buyer and the seller have already valued that, and it's a done deal. That can mean thousands of dollars in savings to the buyer, or it could mean more money to the seller. Let me give you an example. Let's just say, for round numbers, we're selling an airplane for $100,000 and sales tax in our state is 5%. That means there's going to be $5,000 owed to somebody for the sale of that airplane, probably your state. Maybe some of it goes to your county. If you happen to own that airplane in an LLC and are selling it, you could mark the price up a little bit because the seller is not going to have to pay sales tax. And you can make that clear. This is owned in an LLC. You're not going to have to pay sales tax on this when the transfer of the registration goes through, because there is no transfer of the registration. You bought the company. It's still registered to the same entity. There is no transfer as far as the FAA is concerned. It's still owned by the Darn Good Airplane LLC. By the way, Darn Good Airplane, Howard DGA. That's what that means. A little bit of trivia for you. So whether you're on the buyer side or the seller side, an aircraft that's owned in an LLC can be a more attractive purchase. It's just finance. You're buying a company that has assets instead of buying an airplane. In my experience, it really has worked that way. And my CPA is the one who pointed that out to me, and it has been a tremendous gift ever since I found that out. Now, in addition to the sales tax issue, which does save us some money, there's another vexing issue that almost all aircraft owners have. Where am I going to put this thing? I need a hangar for it. It is common at airports all across the country. If I sell my airplane to you and I owned it individually and now it's changing hands, so it's changing from my name to your name, and even if I've got a hangar, the airport's under no obligation to let you keep that same hangar because the airplane is transferring. The lease was with the old owner. You don't get to just take that over because you want it. And you may find you have your dream airplane, but you don't have a hangar. On the other hand, if you were to buy the LLC that happens to own that airplane, there is no transfer. The lease for the hangar space was with the LLC. Nothing has changed. Even though the old owner, the previous owner, has moved on to wherever they want to go, and you now have possession of the aircraft, it's owned by an LLC that you purchased. The LLC has a lease on a hangar. That hasn't changed. So by having that airplane in an LLC, you have liability protection. You probably don't have to pay sales tax. Check with a lawyer and CPA in your state. And you can keep the hangar it was in before because the aircraft did not change hands. It's still owned by the same LLC. The LLC has changed hands, and that's a different deal. Now let's just touch for a moment on the liability portion because people often misunderstand that. An airplane is a wonderful thing to have, and I have really enjoyed every single one of them I've owned. But every once in a while, I might lend that airplane out. And I'm allowed to do that just like I could lend out my motorcycle, I could lend out my car, I can do whatever I want. It is mine. But if I lend somebody that airplane and they have an accident in it, or they do something that's a problem, it's entirely possible I could find myself on the wrong end of a lawsuit. That could happen. If this airplane is owned privately by me, Jamie, yeah, my personal assets are now on the line. But if it's owned by an LLC and I've got an operating agreement and I hold my annual meetings and I'm actually running it like an LLC, the lawsuit can only go after what the LLC owns, which is the airplane. It doesn't own anything else. It doesn't own my car, my house, my 401k, my brokerage account, that box of money that I buried in the backyard a few years ago. We could talk about that another time. All of those things that you personally own are off the table. They are only the things owned by the LLC, and there's probably an insurance policy on that. So there are a number of really good reasons to at least consider having an LLC to own your aircraft. I'm not saying you should. I'm saying you should at least think about it. And there are professionals in your area who can specifically tell you about the rules of an LLC in Maine, or Arkansas, or Nebraska, or Oregon. Wherever you are, go ahead and find out, because if you're shopping for an airplane, it's a good idea to have that LLC set up ahead of time. It's not that expensive. It's not that complicated. And you just might save yourself a whole lot of headaches down the road, both in terms of stress, anxiety, and cash. The reason I bring this up today is I was just talking to a peer earlier today, as a matter of fact, who was working with somebody who unfortunately purchased an airplane, in their own name, then realized they should have had it in an LLC, so they transferred it. By the way, that's another transfer. So when they bought it, they owe sales tax. When they sell it to the LLC, they need more sales tax now because you didn't buy the LLC. The LLC bought the airplane. So you've now paid sales tax twice on the same airplane just because you didn't get the paperwork right the first time around. You can avoid things like that by just being set up in advance. It's not that tough. It's really not. And even if you're just in the shopping phase, that's a pretty good time to think about it. Thanks so much for watching this video. I really do appreciate it. I hope it's been helpful to you, as we hope all our videos are helpful to you. Please let us know what you thought, and if you have any experience with LLCs making your life better as a pilot, as an owner, as a human being walking the planet. Whatever the case may be, we'll see you back here next time at Madpropsaero.